The rumors were just proven by Kris Kristofferson's family, and it's even more heartbreaking than anyone thought. The country star fought a terrible illness in silence for years. Kris kept making art even when things were very bad. He wrote songs and started a final book that was not finished when he died. The truth about how strong he was and what he left behind has now been told by his family. You will not be able to say anything about what they said. His birthday is June 22nd, 1936, and he was born in Brownsville, Texas. Very close to Mexico, it was a small town. Kris grew up in a strict and orderly home because his father was an Air Force officer. He got something extra from living near the border, though, being exposed to Mexican music, society, and language at a young age. Kris actually spoke Spanish before he learned English. As a child, his mom always told him to treat everyone the same, and he never forgot how badly Mexican people were treated back then. He was also affected by the loud music and festivals where he grew up. Kris's family moved around a lot because of his dad's job. He lived in many places, even outside of the U.S. He had seen a lot of the world by the time he was 16 years old. But he always thought of his youth in Brownsville, no matter where they went. He said it was one of the best times of his life. Once he was done with college, he got a Rhodes Scholarship to go to England and study at Oxford University. It was an honor to be here. He spent a lot of time reading writers like William Blake while he was at Oxford studying English literature. But he couldn't stop thinking about music, even when he was studying. He put together a small band and kept writing songs. From that point on, he began to see making songs as more than just a fun hobby. He came up with his own way by studying literature and writing music at the same time. What a cool story about Kris. He wrote his first song when he was only 11 years old. It was called "I Hate Your Ugly Face." The words were funny and a little childish, but they showed how well he could write about strong feelings. In one line, it said, "I just hope you're miserable, you sorry-looking mess." It was only the beginning of his long career as a singer-songwriter. That short song gave you a taste of how honest he would be in his later work. It was as a Rhodes Scholar that he graduated from Oxford in 1960. He then joined the U.S. Army and quickly became a captain. He learned tough things like how to fly helicopters and in Ranger training. While Kris was in West Germany with the 8th Infantry Division, he looked like he had a bright future in the service. But Kris really wanted something else. In 1965, he was offered a dream job teaching English at West Point. Many people would have loved that job. But Kris's answer shocked everyone. His heart told him to become a musician, so he did. His choice made his family sad because they were proud of their war history. They were really mad. They stopped being friends with him. After a few years, his wife also left him. Kris was going through some tough times, but they also gave him the pain and grief that he used to write songs. It wasn't easy to live in Nashville. Kris worked as a cleaner at Columbia Recording Studios from 1965 to 1969 and made only $58 a week. He left demo tapes on tables while he cleaned the floors in the hopes that someone important would listen. But it wasn't easy to stand out, especially when Johnny Cash was around. When Cash didn't listen to his tapes, Kris did something crazy to get his attention. Kris took out a helicopter from his part-time job with the National Guard on June 17, 1969. He flew it right to Johnny Cash's house and landed it on the grass there. His wife yelling that someone had landed a helicopter in their yard, waking him up. Cash at first thought it might be a crazy fan and thought about shooting at the helicopter. But Cash couldn't help but listen when Kris came out with a beer and a tape in the other hand. "Sunday Morning Coming Down" was the song on that tape. Cash really liked it, so in 1970, he played it live on his TV show. Cash said no when the network asked him to change the words. He sang the line, "Lord, I wish I was stoned," just the way Kris wrote it, while looking Kris straight in the eye. It was a big hit. It went to #1 on the country charts and won Song of the Year. Also, Kris's life will never be the same again. Kris went from being a cleaner to a famous singer-songwriter in just a few months. By the end of 1970, he had written 3 of the 5 songs that were up for a Grammy. A lot of famous people like Janis Joplin, Waylon Jennings, and Ray Price began to record his songs. Kris said, "Looking back, that song made it possible for me to quit my job." Kris started getting the attention he earned as he became more successful. He was made a member of the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1985. Then, in 2004, he became a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame, along with greats like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson. Kris was even more proud of this award because he learned about it live on TV during an interview. He also won the Johnny Mercer Award and the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award for his work. Kris Kristofferson's rise in Hollywood is also full of interesting events. In 1973, the movie Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid gave him his big break. He played Billy the Kid. Kris was 36 years old, which was a lot younger than the 21-year-old criminal he played. It didn't matter, though. People really liked how his age made him smarter and more deeply felt. Kris did more than just act in the movie. He worked to get Bob Dylan to come. Dylan was only meant to write a song for the movie at first, but he ended up making the whole music and even had a small part in the movie. Knocking on Heaven's Door, a song Dylan wrote, became a major hit. One of the most well-known songs from the movie, and it became even more well-known after the movie came out. Kris became even more famous after the 1976 movie A Star is Born. He played John Norman Howard, a rock star who was having a hard time with fame and drugs. A Golden Globe Award and a well-known name came from this part. Kris wasn't even the first choice for the part, which is strange. At first, Elvis Presley was considered, but his boss wanted Elvis to get more attention than Barbra Streisand. The deal didn't go through. Instead, Kris took on the part and made it his own, using his real-life experience as a singer to make the character seem real. The movie was a huge hit. It made a lot of money and was one of the year's biggest hits. Kris didn't end there. He has been in more than 100 movies over the years, playing a wide range of roles. He might be a singer, a ruler, a cowboy, or even a vampire hunter. He played Abraham Lincoln in a TV movie called Tad in 1995, and reviewers gave him high marks. It was one of the later parts that surprised me the most. When he started working on Blade movies, Kris, who was 62 years old at the time, played Abraham Whistler, a tough teacher to Wesley Snipes' vampire hunting character. The first Blade movie did well, and Kris stayed with the series for the rest of the movies. Younger people saw him in these movies, and they showed that he could still hold their attention, even in action-packed superhero pictures. It wasn't always easy for him to balance his music and acting jobs. Kris was able to do both, though. In the late 1970s, he was having a lot of success as an actor, but not so much with his singing. He joked that not many people knew about some of his records from that time, but he didn't give up. He kept singing and writing songs even though he spent more time on movies. His work as a musician made parts like the one in A Star is Born more real, and his acting often led to the songs he wrote. He was good at both jobs, which made his work feel real and personal. Like his work life, Kris Kristofferson's domestic life had its ups and downs. He was married 3 times, and each one changed him over the years. Frances Beer, his high school sweetheart, was his first wife. They got married in 1960 and had 2 kids, Kris Jr. and Tracy. But when Kris's career took off, the stress got too much, and in 1969, they split up. In this time, Kris tried to write a book, but no one would print it. So, he joined the Air Force to help support his family. In 1973, Kris married singer Rita Coolidge. The public was very interested in their romance. They had a girl named Casey and even made music together, but their marriage wasn't always easy. There were problems with cheating, drinking, and fighting. In 1980, after 7 years together, they split up. Rita later said that they did have a very close relationship, but she said that people were interested in their story. It turned out that Kris's 3rd marriage was the longest and most stable part of his life. The two met at a gym in Malibu in 1982. Now that Kris had just gone through his 2nd split, he wasn't looking for anything serious. But when he saw Lisa, a law student, he found a reason to talk to her. To start a talk, he asked to borrow some gym gear. Something big happened because of that little moment. They got married in 1983 and were together for more than 40 years, until Kris died in 2024. Kris cared a lot about his family. He was married 3 times and had 8 children. He had 1 daughter, Tracy. Tracy went to Stanford and later became an actor. His daughter with Rita, Casey, became a singer and put out an album in 2019. Kris and Lisa had 5 kids: Blake, Jesse, Jody, Johnny, and Kelly Marie. The family stayed close, and when Kris stopped playing in 2020, Johnny took over managing his music library. Kris Kristofferson was a lot more than just a famous country singer. While he was an activist, he wasn't afraid to speak out against things that were wrong in the country music scene. His involvement grew in the 1980s and 1990s, and the album Third World Warrior, which came out in 1990, was the peak of it. With lines like "They're killing babies in the name of freedom," songs like sharply criticized what the U.S. military was doing. The Vietnam War was the start of his move toward action. His views changed after hearing horrifying stories from soldiers who had come home, like inmates being thrown from helicopters. Kristofferson spoke out against the U.S. attack of Iraq on New Zealand TV in 1991, calling the news coverage propaganda. He was aware that these comments could make people dislike him, but he didn't hold back. A famous fight in 2003 showed how fearless he was. A younger country star, thought to be Toby Keith, told Willie Nelson, "None of that left out there tonight, Chris," at Mr. Nelson's 70th birthday show. Kristofferson, who used to be an Army Ranger, answered strongly and asked the star if he was really a patriot, and if he had ever died for his country. The argument showed how deep the political split was in country music at the time. It cost Kristofferson a lot to be an activist. Fewer job chances came up for people who supported causes like Palestinian rights and Native American activist Leonard Peltier. He once said, "If that's the way it has to be, that's the way it has to be," even though he knew he would lose his job after giving concerts for Palestinian children. He stood up for Sinead O'Connor after she was booed at a Bob Dylan tribute show in 1992. He walked on stage as the crowd booed and told her, "Don't let the jerks get you down." These words later became the basis for his song Sister Synod. Things went badly for Kris Kristofferson in 2009. The famous singer and actor began to forget things when he was 73 years old. He often forgot what he was doing in the middle of writing songs or remembering the words to them. He was told by doctors that he had Alzheimer's or dementia. They thought that the memory loss was due to the many head injuries he had while playing football, fighting, and other sports as a young man. Kris thought this was the diagnosis for almost 7 years. He took medicine for his Alzheimer's and sadness, but it made things worse. Every day, Lisa Myers, his wife, saw him get worse. The man was dying. He used to have a sharp mind and a creative soul. It broke my heart. Kris's job also took a hit. He had trouble remembering lines for plays and wasn't able to do as well on stage as he used to. He had to cut down on going to public events and making art. His life looked like it was slowly falling apart. Then, in 2016, something amazing took place. Kris will be checked for Lyme disease by a new doctor. The test showed that it was true. He didn't have Alzheimer's after all. It had been years since he got treatment for Lyme disease, which is caused by a tick bite. Everything changed when this was found. When they found out the truth, Kris stopped taking the Alzheimer's drugs and began taking antibiotics for 3 weeks to treat Lyme disease. It was a huge change. Lisa said it felt like getting her husband back. He began to remember things, and his energy came back. Even though some days were still hard, it was clear that things were getting better. One of Kris's friends said it was like Kris had come back to life, which was a wonder. Kris Kristofferson changed his life in a big way in 1990. He left the busy city of Hollywood and went to Maui to Hana, a quiet town. It wasn't just about getting a new place to live. It was about getting calm. He was ready to leave his old life of noise and chaos behind. Hana was calm and close to everyone, making him think of the Texas town where he grew up. He said it felt like coming home. It was easy to live in Hana, which was good for Kris. He liked the little things in life all day. He was even caught on camera running a lawnmower around his yard for an interview in 1999. He joked that he took care of the grounds at his own house, which he called an old samurai poet warrior's house. He was happy with it, even though it was very different from his life as a famous singer and actress. Kris's last record, The Cedar Creek Sessions, came out in 2016. His music has always been unique, and these songs were no different. They were full of those deep, honest feelings. That was a great way to end his career, and his fans loved it. Not long after that, in 2021, he formally stopped working. He had already made up his mind in 2020, but the COVID-19 pandemic meant that the news had to be put off. Kris died in peace at home in Maui on September 28, 2024. He was 88 years old and had all the people who loved him most around him. Fans got a word from his family. "If you see a rainbow, know that God is happy with all of us." It was a lovely and easy way to remember him. People all over the world sent Kris Kristofferson words of love and respect when he died. Barbra Streisand, who played his co-star in A Star is Born, told a special story. She could remember the first time she saw him play, which was at the Troubadour in Los Angeles. She said, "I knew right away that he was something special. In the movie, they had great chemistry. They stayed good friends for life." Dolly Parton also told him how she felt and called him a great friend, writer, and actor. She told him, "I love you always." An honor from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was a surprise. He told a lot of people something they didn't know. When he was new to acting, Kris helped him out. He told Kris that he taught him to be true to himself as a performer. He said that Kris had helped him do well in Hollywood. This showed how much Kris affected people's lives, not just music, but also the lives of younger artists. Kris's family had big plans to celebrate him. They told everyone about the Kris Kristofferson Foundation on October 5, 2024. Young singers and artists who don't have much money will get help from this charity. 10 smart people will each get $50,000 to help them follow their dreams. Kris's 89th birthday would have been on June 22, 2025. His family also planned a special show called Me and Bobby McGee for that date. The event will honor Kris Kristofferson and take place at the Hollywood Bowl. Well-known musicians like John Prine and Willie Nelson will play, and all the money raised will go to the charity. Lisa, Kris's wife, said something more private. She said she was going to finish Kris's unwritten autobiography, Highwayman: My Life in Words and Music. His own stories and memories from his family and friends will be in the book. Fans will get to know Kris's life, his time in the service, his battles with addiction, and his rise to fame better. On October 15th, a few weeks later, the family told everyone something they had been keeping secret for years. Kris had a rare disease called Lewy body dementia for 7 years. That's why he stopped being public in 2020. Kris didn't want people to think about how sick he was. He wanted people to remember what he did. He kept writing songs and poems even when things were hard for him. His family said that his last works would be put out in a collection called The Last Outlaw: Final Thoughts and Melodies. There will be 15 songs and spoken word pieces on this record that Kris wrote in his last years. But there was something even more surprising. Kris had been writing a book called The Silver-Tongued Devil. It's about a country singer who was having trouble remembering things and looking for forgiveness. Kris got almost done with it before he failed. Ethan Hawke, a close friend of his, will finish the book. It will come out in late 2025. These times show that Kris never stopped making art, even when things got hard. His family and friends are making sure that his message goes on through his music, the people he helped, and the art he left behind.